Welcome back to Investing Talk Podcast. We're going to be looking at Gorilla Technology Group today,
GRRR.
GRRR. And yeah, you sent me some interesting stuff about what's been happening with this company in the stock market,
Yeah.
and we thought it'd be cool to unpack it.
It's a good one to unpack. I think, early 2025 has been sort of marked by a bunch of different things, trade policy, economic conditions, but then also some really specific developments in tech and AI.
Right.
I think Gorilla Technology, with their focus on, AI-driven smart infrastructure and security, they're a good example of some of the movements we've seen.
So what we want to do today is help people make sense of it all,
Yeah, absolutely.
without getting too bogged down
Right.
in the details and really kind of pulling out the most important insights from the information you provided.
Yeah, let's start with just the stock's recent performance.
Okay.
I think that's a good place to begin. Over the past 3 months, Gorilla Technology stock has increased by over 430%.
That's a huge increase.
It is.
And it reached a 52-week high of $44.15 earlier this month.
It did. As of March 17th, 2025, it's trading around $41.91.
Okay.
And I think what's worth noting is that the S&P 500 has actually declined by 3.3% during the same period.
So what do you think were some of the positive developments that fueled this impressive rise?
Well, a couple of announcements that served as positive catalysts. On March 10th, 2025, they announced a major AI-driven energy transformation project with Thailand's Provincial Electricity Authority.
Okay.
That got investors pretty interested.
When you say an AI-driven energy transformation project, what does that actually look like?
That's a good question. They're probably leveraging their AI capabilities to optimize energy distribution, maybe predicting demand and improving grid security. You're basically using smart tech to make the energy infrastructure more efficient and safer. So it's a pretty substantial application of their AI focus.
Okay. What else contributed to this upward movement?
So then on March 13th, we had two pieces of news come out. First, Gorilla Technology announced a partnership with a $100 billion global edge fund.
Whoa.
They were named their exclusive AI and digital infrastructure partner. And then during an interview with Schwab Networks, they actually increased their 2025 revenue guidance. They bumped it up to $110 million from $100 million with a projected 50% margin. So that revised outlook suggested some pretty strong anticipated growth.
So it sounds like it was a combination of big new projects and a more optimistic financial forecast.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay. But there were also some negative influences.
Yeah, for sure. Not all the news was good.
So what were those?
So on March 6th, 2025, a short report was released by the Bear Cave.
Okay.
And for listeners who don't know, a short report, you can think of it like an investigative piece that comes out and argues why a company's stock is likely to fall. So they raised some questions about Gorilla's pivot towards AI. They questioned the partnerships, the legitimacy of them, and they also kind of raised concerns about the transparency of their financial reporting. And that report did cause a single-day drop in the stock price, although Gorilla Technology denied the claims.
Okay.
Then, adding to the uncertainty, on March 14th, 2025, Levi and Korsinski announced a securities fraud investigation, which, it doesn't necessarily mean wrongdoing has occurred, but it does introduce a layer of uncertainty. And I think these events really highlight how news, both positive and negative, can impact smaller tech companies,
It shows you how volatile things can be.
Right, exactly.
So what about the technical analysis side of things?
From a technical perspective, the price action has been pretty remarkable, especially that 430% surge over 3 months.
Right.
And we've seen this big increase in trading volume, which suggests a heightened level of interest from traders.
So looking at some of the key technical indicators, what are we seeing there?
So the 50-day simple moving average is currently at $24.50, and the 200-day is at $15.80. And the current price is significantly above both of these longer-term averages.
Right.
The 14-day RSI is currently sitting at 78.
And just to remind our listeners, the RSI, what does that mean?
So usually an RSI above 70 is considered overbought, and that means that it might be due for a pullback or, some consolidation.
What about specific price levels? Are there any that technical analysts are looking at?
Yeah, some key support levels seem to be around $38, and then lower around $24, and then in the $15 to $18 range.
Okay.
On the other side, the immediate resistance is at that 52-week high of $44.15. And if it regains that upward momentum, some people think $50 could be a potential target.
Okay.
But there's this pattern called a rising wedge that has formed on the chart, and that often suggests a higher probability of a downward break.
So it might go down.
It might. It might. We've seen this really rapid price increase, and sometimes that's a sign of what's called a blow-off top, which basically means it's a really sharp and unsustainable rise.
Okay, interesting. So the technicals suggest some caution.
They do.
What are analysts who cover the company and the industry saying?
So it's interesting. The Zacks consensus estimate for 2025 adjusted earnings per share for Gorilla is actually 28 cents, which is up from 16 cents in the past month. So analysts are getting more optimistic.
That's a pretty big jump in
Yeah,
earnings expectations.
it is. And if you look at the broader industry, there's a really obvious growing global demand for AI infrastructure.
Right.
Gorilla's partnerships are really well positioned to capitalize on that huge market.
Okay.
But, there's also some potential challenges, right? We could see some tariff impacts on tech earnings, which might indirectly affect Gorilla's valuation.
Right. So even with a positive outlook on the company and the industry, there are some macroeconomic things that could come into play.
Absolutely, yeah.
What were some of the potential investment strategies based on your information?
So for traders who are focused on the short term, the volatility could present some good opportunities to profit from price swings. Maybe buy around that $15 to $18 level on a pullback, and then sell if it goes back above $44.
What about if you're thinking long term?
So for investors with a longer time horizon, the fact that Gorilla Technology's market cap is still under $1 billion and its revenue is projected to grow, that could be a really interesting long-term opportunity, especially for folks who are optimistic about AI infrastructure in general. But you have to consider those risks associated with transparency that were highlighted in that short report. And the ongoing investigation's still out there.
Right.
Some people are saying that a dip below $24 might be a good entry point for those long-term investors.
So it seems like no matter what time frame you're looking at, risk management's super important.
Yeah, absolutely. Because the stock does have a high valuation
Yeah.
and there's that ongoing investigation. So things like tight stop loss orders and making sure your portfolio is diversified, that's super important.
So bringing it all together, we can see that the news, both good and bad, has had a huge impact on the stock price of Gorilla Technology.
I mean, the rapid growth and the ambitious projects they're taking on are definitely attracting investors, but those concerns that have been raised, they do introduce a lot of caution.
And technically, it might be due for a pullback after such a strong run-up.
Yeah, I think so.
But at the same time, the fundamentals in AI and the company's revenue projections present a different picture
Yeah, they do.
for long-term potential.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
So understanding how these factors work together, news, technicals, and the company's outlook is going to be super important.
Yeah, absolutely.
As you consider the information that you're gathering, hopefully this has helped clarify things a bit.
One final thought. With all the volatility surrounding Gorilla Technology and those really strong opinions, both positive and negative, it makes you think about, how do you balance reacting to the news versus doing your own deep dive on the fundamentals when you're thinking about companies in emerging sectors?
If you found this examination helpful, please subscribe, like, and comment.